It is an honor for me to be here with each of you today. I mean, in this room, we've got people I consider Baylor legends. I have the opportunity to travel around and talk to Baylor alumni groups all over the country. And what I love to tell Baylor, our alums, is that Baylor has always been an amazing place. And I think just being on campus today, hopefully you feel the energy that we have on campus. And the thing that makes Baylor special are the people, many of those individuals in this room today. And we continue to do that, provide an opportunity for students to be able to come to this beautiful campus each and every day and be challenged and nurtured and supported by all the adults. And I look at a number of people who did that for me as a student in this room today. And I also look around and see people who have continuously supported the school over multiple generations. And that is what is going to help sustain us forever and to continue long beyond all of us. And that is the whole premise behind Great Work Society, formerly known as the Heritage Society, and I just think perfectly renamed for Scotty Probasco as the Great Work Society, because this was very important to him. Just quickly, before I introduce today's speaker, an update. Many of you haven't been on campus in a while, and I would encourage you to please come back as often as you would like and enjoy what's happening on campus. The school continues to thrive. I was fortunate 4 years ago to take the red baton from Scott Wilson and to keep running with it. He did such a great job for the school, and it's an honor for me to continue to run with that baton, and we continue to have success here. Lots of things are happening. You'd be happy to know the school has continuously grown as well. There are a few new buildings, and we started this year with 1,113 students, 6 through 12, 237 boarders. Both of those numbers are the largest we've ever had. And so we have a really large senior class, 210. We have the largest sixth grade class, 123, that we've ever had. And so there's a significant demand for a Baylor education, and we're going to continue to provide opportunities. And I think as we continue as the adults on campus to provide opportunities for these students, there's going to continuously be a demand for Baylor. I think it's as important as ever in today's world for there to be the opportunity to attend a school like Baylor. So the only way that happens is to have support, and all of you in the room have supported Baylor in a number of ways. And so it's an honor for me to welcome you back, each of you, as retired faculty members, as members of the Great Work Society, to our beloved alma mater. Someone who represents magnanimitas extremely well is Miles Marks, who is class of 1986. He's our guest speaker today, and it is my honor to introduce him. Miles was a boarding student from Atlanta, graduating in '86, and he's done a lot of things in his life, but the best thing he ever did was marry Jenny Grantham, who was a Baylor cheerleader at the time, not when they were married, but a little later on.
Don't steal my thunder, Chris.
Oh, sorry. We should have talked through that. Miles and Jenny are the parents of 4 children. Molly, Miles Jr., class of 2018, and then Annie and Ella, who graduated this past spring, 2024, and are attending the University of Georgia. I know Scott Wilson would appreciate that as well. But Miles, in many ways, continues to serve his alma mater. He's definitely been on the board and supported us in about every way you can support the school, and is certainly also a member of the Great Work Society. So we're honored that he's here to speak with us today. So let's give him a big red welcome, Miles Marks.
Thank you all. It's a real pleasure to be here. Where's Matt? Matt, I feel a little outclassed this morning. I feel like, was I number, there 40 people in there? Was I number 40 on the list of people to talk? So it is a room full of greatness this morning, and I am humbled to be here.
Numero uno.
Numero uno. So, well, I hope that I don't underwhelm you. And then where's Rob? Rob Robinson. So a quick story. When Miles was probably a junior at Baylor, we were having a scholarship dinner, and John Harrison, I don't know, some of you know John Harrison, a dear, dear friend of mine who's no longer with us but served Baylor in just amazing ways. But John called me and he said, Miles, are you going to be in Chattanooga in the next 3 weeks, specifically on this Tuesday with a date? And, you know, of course I said yes, because John was in failing health and he was having a hard time seeing, and so we would drive him back and forth to Chattanooga. Anybody that knows me knows very well that there's no way I knew what my schedule was in 3 weeks, but so I said yes. We got in the car and we drove up, and I said, John, what are you doing tonight? He said, well, we're doing the scholarship dinner. And he said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm coming up to have dinner with Miles. So he said, come to the scholarship dinner. I said, I'll do it. And I think I was probably dressed a little bit like this. And so I went in and saw a bunch of old friends, but what I really saw was an amazing, amazing evening of these scholarship recipients and the people who had funded those scholarships sitting with them. And it really moved me that night. I've always talked about our ability, success, kind of what we do for ourselves, and significance is what we do for others. And I saw an incredible amount of significance that night. And driving back, I said, John, that's amazing what I saw tonight. And I saw this kid from Chicago. He said, you know, his mom's never been on campus, and he's getting ready to graduate, and he's going to go to VMI, and when he graduates from there, he wants to come back and he wants to serve Baylor. And I said, you know, this has changed this kid's life. And, you know, I've always said that no one loves Baylor more than me over the years, and I had to change that a little bit. So I modified it to where, no, I love Baylor as much as the next person. There is no one that, I said I've always loved Baylor more, and now I just say I love Baylor as much as the other person that loves it. And it's just the amount of energy that was in that room last night. So I said, John, how do I impact that? You know, I'm a young guy, not really 50 years old, but still felt young at the time. And he said, you need to talk to Rob. And so 2 days later, Rob Robinson was in my office in Atlanta, and we had an incredible conversation, and that was kind of my entry to the great works. And so, Rob, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here as well. So this is going to be a little more scripted than I typically do. Because there's a lot of greatness in this room, and Matt, I am serious. It's amazing that you have given me this opportunity, but Matt also told me I had 10 minutes, and anybody that knows me, I'll pick my head down and be talking about Baylor, and I'll pick it up in 2 hours, and you'll all be gone, and I'll still be talking about how much I love this place and how much it's done for me. So I'll start with good morning, and what an honor it is to be here to celebrate the Great Works Society and our commitment to the future of our beloved Baylor School and to the future generations of students who will walk our campus. As members of the Great Works Society, as well as those in this room, have dedicated themselves to doing great work, we stand as a collective group with the common goal of sustaining the legacy of our great institution. For those who have not had the chance to meet, and Chris just told you, I'm Miles Marks from Atlanta, a 4-year boarder. I lived in Provo Hall for 2 years, and then I lived in Trustee Hall. My wife Jenny and I met. I was a junior on campus in 1984. Jenny was a sophomore at GPS. And, you know, at 3 o'clock, the schools got out and the magnets cranked up, and here we were. So we used to play soccer out on right field, and there was the old track around it. And I kind of felt like John Travolta from Grease when Jenny would show up. I'd kind of stand up and run a little faster and kind of see if she'd notice me. And finally it worked, so she did. But like you said, we got 4 children, Molly, Miles, Annie, and Ella. Molly graduated from Pace Academy in Atlanta, Georgia, and 3 of our 4 children came here, and the only reason that Molly wasn't here is because she was our first, and we were helicopter parents at the time, thinking we could probably do a better job with Molly or our kids than anybody else. And lo and behold, the next 3 came up here and proved me wrong. But Miles graduated in 2018, Annie and Ella in 24. Everyone in our family holds Baylor in a very special place in our hearts, and I sincerely mean that. This place has had a bigger impact on my life than any other 4-year experience I've had. So when Matt called and asked me a few words this morning about Baylor and what it means to me, I readily accepted. But there was a catch I told you about. Matt said I'm limited to 10 minutes, as he knows I can go down and on and on and on about Baylor. But let me tell you, I guess, where it started. It started in 1981. My parents put me on a Greyhound bus in Atlanta and sent me to Chattanooga and said, when you get to Chattanooga, look for the red van and get on it. There was no cell phones, no tracking devices, just a sense of trust that it would all work. And when I got there, the van was there. I got on the bus. This charming, handsome, good-looking guy who had just graduated from Georgia picked me up. He was working in the admissions department. And he drove me around for the day. And that night, I spent the night in the dorm. And the next morning, I got up and toured campus. And as it worked out, I found myself, the next fall, I was a freshman over in Probasco Hall. And that was very intimidating. Maybe as intimidating as it is right now to be in front of this group of greatness and kind of trying to hold my own with you guys. But this morning, as Jenny and I pulled through the gates, the same 4 words I always repeat, I did. And I said, I love this place. And I literally say that every time. The hair used to stand up on my arms, and not as much as it used to, but every time we pull through the gates, I say I love this place. The beauty of the campus is stunning in all seasons, but especially the fall. It's hard to imagine anything more beautiful until you meet the community and the people that make up the community of our great school. It starts at the guardhouse with Miss Hattie and her infectious smile and warm greeting, and it spreads all the way across the campus. It doesn't take long to realize that Baylor is a special place, a school that invests in the treatment with people with respect, acceptance, and what I love the most, where it's cool to be kind. What more could we want for our children? We talk about the importance of legacy and what it means to us. I actually took the time to look it up last night, and the definition that I found that I feel like is most applicable to where we are today is the footprints we leave behind, it's the experiences we create, and it's the value we pass on, the past, the present, and the future. Each of us has our own Baylor experience, with one commonality being that the people who impact us, the members of the community who dedicated themselves to the students, the academics, the honor code, the culture, the stage, the fields, the rivers, the courts, however each of us fits in, whatever the combination of roles we all play, we are Baylor, and I love that. We have had many great people who have influenced our legacy. Some are no longer with us, some are leaving their mark today, and some are just starting their journey. But they all will be remembered for the accomplishments, the character, the values they embodied, and their commitment to something greater than themselves. And I look at these guys, and they are giants in my mind. And many of you are here today, and so on behalf of the Baylor community, I'd like to go ahead and say thank you for an incredible, incredible dedication to our school. So thank you all, and you know who you are here today. So I ask, who do you think of when you reflect on the giants who shaped your life, your Baylor experience, and the impact it's had on your life? For me, the list is long, but I'll name a few. Scott Wilson. Scott picked me up in Baylor School in 1981. He's the one that picked me up in the bus, and I messed up a little bit. I wanted to go back and say, because Chris, where's Chris? Chris got me off track. I was going to tell you that 30 years later, when I got off that bus, I came back. My son Miles came up to me in Atlanta and said, Dad, I want to go to Baylor. I said, Miles, why Baylor, son? You're thriving in Atlanta. He said, I've always heard you say that those were the 4 most influential years of your life, and I want the same. So I called that guy that was driving me around that van that day, and I called him. I said, hey, Scott Wilson, is it still cool to be a good kid? He said, come see what we're doing. And so that was the beginning of our second generation. So to Scott Wilson, thanks for picking me up at the bus station in 1981, for my overnight visit, and for 30 years helping us launch our children as they had their own Baylor experience. Scott, I love our history, my friend. Thank you. To Dr. Barks for the vision, leadership, and more importantly, allowing me to come to Baylor. To Ray Deering, guys, that was my dad away from home, and I loved him dearly. To Lewis Rush, my advisor, my math teacher, and someone who pushed me early on as he saw something in myself that I didn't see in myself. And Mr. Rush, Lewis, thank you for your lasting friendship. It means a lot to me. To Coach Cox and Mrs. Cox for being supportive of new freshmen in Probasco Hall, wondering if he could make it in his new school, because it's intimidating coming from Atlanta, Georgia, and fitting into this community. To Herbert Mitz, many of y'all may not know who Herbert was. Herbert was the custodian, and Herbert did an incredible job keeping the dorms clean, but more importantly, he took great pride in his work. And I remember watching him as he carried himself around this campus. So Herbert always had an impact on me. To Marvin Webb and Steve Kirshner, I don't know if you guys remember, there used to be a house down here where the volleyball courts are now, and it was the Walkabout House. And I have no idea why in the world Baylor would let Marvin and Steve live in that house together. Seriously. So, you know, I'd go down there and there'd be a big bag in the corner and they, you know, and it was full of cans, I'm sure, and it was tied off. And I'd be like, what's that? And they're like, don't mess with that. We're working over here. And, but anyway, they helped me develop a true love for the outdoors, which I still have today. And Steve Kirshner was my soccer coach and just absolutely had a huge impression on me. To Herr Pachter. Mr. Pachter was the German teacher at Baylor, and what impressed me so much was he's created a scoring methodology that allowed a student's hard work and lack of ability still pass a class. That's true. So, and it was amazing. So, you know, to Mrs. Lewis, who taught me typing, even though I was convinced that typewriters and keyboards were going to be extinct. Kind of. Nurse Nikki, I don't know if y'all remember Nurse Nikki. She was the nurse that ran the infirmary, who allowed me to feign sickness from time to time when I needed a day off. And literally, I would go down and I would say, I need a day. And she would put me back in the infirmary, and I'd sit there and sleep and kind of do a little bit of work. But she knew as well as I did what was going on. But it was just nice to have those relationships. And Rudy and Bob. Is Rudy here today? Rudy, great to see you. Rudy and Bob ran the bookstore. And that's a big deal to a boarding student. Two things happen there. You get your letters from home, and you get your money on Friday. So, and every Friday I would go into that bookstore for my allowance. But more importantly, the letters from home. And Rudy had seen me 2 or 3 times one day coming into that mailbox and turning that key, number 71. I'd open it and close it, open it, close it. And the letter finally came, but rather than sticking it in my mailbox, Rudy came and found me on campus that day and hand-delivered that letter, and that meant a ton to me. These are small little things, but just as a boarding student, they meant so much to us. But Rudy, I still got a shoebox full of my mom and dad's letters they sent me when I was at Baylor, and I will never forget that. To Coach Clark, Coach Clark had the unique ability to get the attention of 2 generations of Mark's boys. I got a call from Coach Clark one morning about 11 o'clock, and he said, hey, Miles, it's Coach Clark. How you doing? I said, Coach, I'm doing great. What's going on? He said, well, I just woke your boy up. And there was a pause, and I waited, and I knew the punchline was coming. He said, after he slept through his first 3 classes. To say that Coach Clark definitely had a lasting impression on my son would be an understatement. So Miles sends his gratitude this morning as he's got a job that requires him to get up early every single morning, and to date, he has never been late. So to Miss Kitty and Mr. Ricky for serving the nutritious meals in the dining hall during the day and then staying late at night to open up the student center after study hall so that the boys could get something to eat. That's a big deal. And Baylor didn't want a bunch of hungry boys running around at night, so it was kind of interesting how they and by the way, they're still up there in the student center, which is amazing. So Shaq Van Duzen, I call him the Renaissance teacher. He taught me how to stick an opponent with a half Nelson on the wrestling mats. And earlier that day, we'd been in class, and he would teach me to recite Shakespeare's most noted soliloquy in Macbeth. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day until the last syllable of recorded time. And I can go on, but thank you, Shaq. You've made me look smart more than a few times. And Bruce High, I love this story. This is probably one of our, it's a great moment, so I can't put, but John Barker, John Wise, and Lance Lee, we were all 4 boarders. We decided that it would be very clever if we could get Mr. High's car out of the parking lot, because he never locked it in his stick shift, and we were going to roll it up into Barks Hall. And so that afternoon, we'd kind of been scurrying around, and we found the boards so we could traverse up the stairs. And we got the car right in front of the doors, and we opened the doors, and it had the center post, so we took the center post out, and to our amazement, the car fit perfectly, about that much between the mirrors, between the lockers and the mirrors on each side. And we were sitting there, and we were looking at it, admiring our work, and behind us we heard this voice say, and gentlemen, if you can get it out as quietly as you got it in and without damaging my car, we'll forget that this happened. It gets better. So, you know, we were fastly approaching the end of our Baylor career, and we felt complete. You know, one of the greatest rewards for a teacher is when the student becomes the teacher. And that night, the students became the teacher. We taught Mr. High the value of patience, self-control, and forgiveness. And as we drove off that night, we saw him grinning ear to ear, and it was an incredible moment for us. There's a few others that are in this room. Coach McMahon. I didn't run track, but I always admired Coach McMahon and everything that he did for me off the track and in the gym. And he doesn't know this, but when Miles came to Baylor, and you had earned this, Coach, but when Miles came to Baylor, I saw him 5 times before he ever saw me, because every time I walked through the gym, he was sitting on an athletic table taking a nap. And I woke him up one time and he said, "Marks, what are you doing here?" So thank you for everything. Floyd Celapino, we talked about it this morning. I never had a class with you, but we certainly had a friendship that I certainly treasured. And Dan Kennedy, the voice of the Baylor football. And boy, your job's been easy this year, hasn't it? But Dr. Kennedy was here. So it just looking around the room, it's just amazing. The history is amazing. I often tell folks that I work with that the difference between good and great is tenure, and it is people that have dedicated their lives to something special, and that is exactly what you guys have done, and for that I thank you. And finally, to Chris Angel. Chris and I walked the halls together back in the 80s. We were students together. You're here in the present, Chris, and you're going to lead us into the future, and everybody in this room thanks you for that. While some of these gestures may seem small and even liminal, the lasting impression is immeasurable. I learned many lessons in the classroom, and I learned just as many outside of the classroom. And then the unthinkable happened. I graduated from Baylor, and it was time to move on. After graduation, I had an appreciation for my time at Baylor and the relationships I formed. Jenny and I attended multiple reunions on campus, alumni gatherings in Atlanta. We hosted multiple open houses in our home in Atlanta for prospective dorm students. And in the summers, Jenny and I brought our children to Chattanooga so they could go to the summer camps and experience Baylor the same way that we had. And 30 years later, we're back on campus with 3 of our children walking in our footsteps, and that's been incredibly rewarding for us as well. Now they've graduated, and we've completed our past and present states at Baylor, playing a small role in the part of contributing to the great Baylor legacy. We proudly look forward to our unending role in the future as being members of the Great Works Society. In closing, I hope we can lean into the future, remember our past and those who brought us where we are today. I hope it's a message we can share with the community. The Great Works Society is not just about financial support. It's about sustaining our legacy through vision and leadership. It's about envisioning a brighter future and ensuring Baylor remains a place of educational excellence, promoting positive character development, and a sense of community that weaves this great school's fabric. God bless you all. Thank you, and go Big Red.